Hi and welcome back to the cottage. Today I'm going to be talking about productivity and how some very common popular productivity tips might actually be working against us. There's a lot of information out there on how to be more productive, more efficient, and to make the very most out of our time, and lots of different tips and techniques that have been developed to help us do just that. And while there are great intentions behind them and the tips themselves are good, if we're not careful in implementing them, I think that they can actually make us less productive. So these are 5 myths about productivity, and I think some of them might surprise you. The first is the classic to-do list. I don't know about you, but it's my natural tendency to want to write every single thing down on my to-do list because I'm worried I might forget about it. But an interesting study was done that found that any more than 7 items on a list tends to overwhelm and actually shut down our brains. And when we look at these large, long lists, all of the words on the paper tend to look the same or equal. And so it's hard for us to really pull apart which are actually most important. The problem with the very long list, the never-ending to-do list, is that it's always being added to. And so you might cross off 1 or 2 things and add 4 or 5 more throughout the day. And so there's kind of this defeating notion behind it that it's never really fully done. So then what should we do? Not make to-do lists at all? I'm not suggesting that because, again, to-do lists can be very helpful, but I would encourage you to instead try to have 2 lists going at any given time. The first would be more of a brain dump master list where you can write down all of these ideas and have them stored securely. And the other, much smaller, would be a prioritized to-do list. To-do lists are really used as an accountability tool because we are accountable to getting those things done that are on the list, and we can get some feedback by crossing the items off of the list or erasing the dry erase marker. However, you could take this a step farther by having an accountability partner to talk through these ideas with. My mom and younger sister have developed a technique that they've been using for the past 6 years. They call it their daily challenges, and they choose 3 things to add to their daily challenge list, and then at the end of the day they check back in with one another to see if they have each accomplished what they set out to do. And this is another great way to just kind of boost up the idea of the to-do list and to make it a little bit more fun. Other people may choose to offer themselves a little reward as an incentive to get those items on the prioritized list accomplished. Maybe an afternoon coffee or 30 minutes of guilt-free, uninterrupted reading time. One final to-do list tip. If the overall task is too overwhelming for you, it's okay to write it down in smaller steps. So for example, if you have to paint a bedroom, but the idea of writing that down on your prioritized list is giving you some anxiety because you don't think you can actually accomplish that within the given time that you have, it's okay to write down paint 1 wall of said room or paint 2 walls. And you might find that once you get the paint supplies out and you get started that you can do more than that. But the idea is that you will be able to accomplish what you have written down. So if you write down 1 wall and that's all you get done, you have accomplished what you needed to do for that day. The second popular myth out there is that by not procrastinating, we will be able to be much more productive. Now, procrastination has the reputation of being a productivity stunter. We have visions of somebody slouched over on a couch with a bag of chips in one hand and a remote control in the other. Many of us will equate the idea of procrastinating with laziness. So it might surprise you to find that sometimes procrastination can make us more productive. Let me give you an example of how not procrastinating can cause some issues. Let's say that you've chosen your 3 prioritized items from your to-do list that you really need to and want to accomplish on that day. And you have to mow the lawn, you're going to do that first, and then you're going to fold the laundry, and then you're going to pay some bills. So you get outside, you start your mower, you're going around your yard, and you notice while you're mowing that the bird feeder needs to be filled. You notice that the weeds in the vegetable garden are choking out your vegetables. And you also see that there's a large limb that's fallen from a tree that you need to cut up and get stacked in the woodpile. So While you're out there, you don't want to procrastinate, so you decide, I'm already outside, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of these other outside chores while I'm at it, and I'll just get all of these things done. 3 hours and probably a lot of sweat later, you head back inside to accomplish the next item on your prioritized list of folding the laundry. But you find out that it's already lunchtime and you're pretty hungry. So you decide to make yourself some food. And you can't really eat and fold laundry at the same time, so you give yourself a little bit of a break and decide to watch a show. Before you know it, another hour has passed. Do you see what happened? By trying to intentionally avoid procrastinating, you inadvertently did it anyway. Another way that the not procrastinating mindset may lead to low productivity is that it might turn you into someone who's really good at starting things, but not so great at finishing them. The overall idea is that doing a little here and a little there can easily lead you off track. Now, I'm not suggesting that you become a couch potato, but I am asking you to give yourself a little bit of grace. Sometimes things genuinely do need to be left for later. A couple of tips that can help in this regard. Instead of tackling these little random things that come up throughout the day right at that moment, add them to that brain dump or could-do list and save them there for later. Keep on track with those 3 main things that you had previously committed to, and once those are accomplished, then you can offer yourself maybe 30 minutes to an hour to set a timer and get as many of those little random things that you had seen throughout the day accomplished and tie up some of those loose ends. Now, a quick caveat to this, if the task at hand is going to take you less time than actually writing it down on the list, go ahead and do that at that moment. So bringing the cup from the end table to the kitchen sink or hanging your shirt up on the hanger. The third productivity myth is that we can rely on discipline alone to get a lot done. Sometimes we feel like if we just had enough discipline, we could get so much accomplished and be so much more productive. The idea here is that if we just show up, things are going to get done. And in a lot of ways, that's true. If we have discipline, it's going to get us through those days when we're feeling lazy or just really not up to the task. We've developed the habit of discipline and we're going to pull ourselves up and, as the Nike phrase says, just do it. So then what is the problem with discipline? With discipline only, we are missing a key factor that truly aids in productivity, and that is motivation, our inner desire to get something done. Honestly, I don't think it's possible to have true discipline without at least some measure of motivation. Why? Resentment and burnout. Think about homemaking as an example. We can have the discipline to do the dishes every single day. We can even form a habit of it. But if we are only washing the dishes to check a box, we're going to get really sick of that chore really quickly. And what is that going to do for our discipline? It's going to falter. As humans, we need to know that our work matters. And we also want to have a sense of free will. That is where motivation comes in. And it's true that each of us may have different reasons to be motivated to do the exact same task. Where I might have motivation to wash up my dishes so that I can enjoy a clutter-free and clean kitchen, someone else might want to do the dishes so that they can get those tools cleaned up to start experimenting with a brand new recipe. And really quickly, before I move on to the next point, I think the opposite is also true. We can have all sorts of motivation and desire to do something, but without discipline, it's unlikely that we're going to be very productive at all. If you want a little analogy to keep in your back pocket for the times when those chores are feeling ultra mundane and repetitive and boring, here's a simple one for you. Discipline is the wheel or the framework, and motivation is what keeps that wheel turning. The next myth has to do with multitasking. Now, multitasking seems like a great productivity hack because, hey, we can get 2 things done in the same amount of time that we would do 1 thing. However, not all of us are well equipped to be multitaskers. And there's a couple other problems too. Number one, by not giving something your full attention, you're likely to not also give it your best effort. So perhaps the quality of the product that you're turning out or the task that you're doing might be a little lower than if you were to just focus on one thing at a time. The other problem is that when you're trying to do a lot of things at the same time, any little outside influence or interruption can completely derail your line of productivity. So a great visual example for this one is the idea of a person balancing plates on poles. You've probably seen this as like a circus act or at a carnival. The person would be using all of their attention to make sure those plates keep spinning on those poles. But what would happen if a tiny little squirrel came along and tried to run up the leg of that person thinking that they were a tree? Well, that's going to be a major distraction and likely those plates are going to fall. So you do have to be very careful about what you choose to multitask and when you choose to multitask. First, you need to understand if you're the type of person who can handle this. Again, like I said before, some people aren't equipped to be multitaskers, and that's okay. But if it's something that you think you can do, here are a couple of tips. First, it's important to recognize that some things are easier to multitask than others. You've probably seen me wearing headphones and working on household chores here in our home. This is an easy multitasking situation because I'm listening to something that is sort of entertainment, and I'm also doing a task that is fairly routine, fairly mundane. It doesn't take a lot of brain power. Another way that can be fairly easy to multitask is if you're doing something that is similar to the other thing. So if you have two tasks going on, but they're similar enough in nature. So if you're in the kitchen and you are cooking a soup for supper, but you also want to prep breakfast for the next day, you're already in the kitchen, you're already doing that thing, and that will work okay. Or if you're outside, maybe working in the woods, cutting down some trees, and you have a brush pile that is burning nearby. You can manage both the cutting down of the tree and the brush pile at the same time. But if you're trying to cut down a tree and manage a brush pile, and at the same time make sure that your soup isn't burning, those are going to be probably too far removed from one another to really truly multitask. And the final myth is that you can be more productive if you are on a set schedule. Schedules can look so great when laid out on paper and everything works out perfectly. There's a time slot for each and every task, and as long as we follow the program, we're going to be able to get so much accomplished and be so productive. Unfortunately, there is an enemy to the schedule, and that is LIFE. It's going to happen, and it's unlikely that it will fit perfectly into that schedule that you've created. So first, let's talk about how schedules can benefit us. It is important to know when things are coming up, especially in a semi-long-term way. We're able to write things down on the calendar, maybe appointments or different events that we have to attend, and we can kind of forecast in that way to see how busy our days are going to be. But when we use this scheduling technique on a more micro level, say the day-to-day goings of our life, that is when things get a little bit more complicated and scheduling might not be quite as helpful in productivity. We may find ourselves not being realistic about the amount of time it takes to do any given task, and in turn that can cause some problems for us. We might find ourselves rushing through a task just so that we can get it done in that set time frame, or we might push through and not allow ourselves to have any breaks if we're seeing that we're going to be getting too close to the deadline of when we set in our schedule that we were going to be done. Say we had offered up 30 minutes to get this job done, and now here we are at 40 minutes, and so we can't stop. We need to keep pushing through, and this can lead to burnout and overwhelm and really unnecessary stress. So what can we do to combat this? I recommend opting for a rhythm or routine approach rather than a strict schedule whenever possible. And when you're practicing a daily rhythm, you're not looking at specific hour times, you're more looking at the time of day and when things are going to be accomplished in sequential order. So you might start off your day with breakfast, and then you know the next thing you're going to do and the next thing you're going to do, and you try to fit in those to-do list items from your priority list wherever they might fit best. Another thing that can be very helpful and set you up for a lot of productivity with this rhythm system is to give yourself a set of resets and presets. These can happen daily, weekly, and sometimes even monthly. The idea here is that you are going to get yourself ready and have these things that are done ahead of time finished so that they don't interfere with the flow of your day. So a couple of examples would be a nightly reset where maybe you wash all of the dishes, sweep the floors, and get everything kind of reset for the next day. Or even putting clothes aside for each of your kids before they wake up in the morning and get ready for school. And a really common morning preset is making the beds. I know for myself personally, when this one task is completed, I feel a sense of productivity and I know that my day is off to a great start. And this might happen at different hours of the day. Some mornings I might make my bed at 6 a.m. and others it might be 8 a.m. The time doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be scheduled, but I know that when that task happens, the rhythm is beginning and my day is about to start. So there you go. I hope that this list helps to dispel some of those productivity myths and also encourages you in realizing that some of these tips that we get, they can be very helpful, but we might need to tweak them just a little bit to work the best for our personal situation. If anything I said was surprising to you or encouraging to you, I'd love to hear about that down in the comment section. We can chat down there. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope that you'll stop by the cottage again really soon.